The enduring influence of the women's suffrage movement on American politics. Introduction. The women's suffrage movement, a decades-long struggle for women's right to vote, left an indelible mark on American politics, transforming the landscape of civic engagement and representation. Emerging in the 19th century and culminating in the ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920, this movement not only secured voting rights for women but also catalyzed broader changes in political attitudes, activism, and the pursuit of gender equality. This article explores the profound influence of the women's suffrage movement on American politics, examining its historical context, key milestones, and lasting impact. Historical context. Seneca Falls Convention. The women's suffrage movement gained momentum in 1848 with the Seneca Falls Convention in New York. Organized by suffragists including Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, the convention marked the beginning of organized efforts to advocate for women's rights, including the right to vote. Suffrage associations. The movement led to the formation of suffrage associations, most notably the National American Woman Suffrage Association, NAWSA, and the more militant National Woman's Party, NWP. Suffragists engaged in advocacy, protests, and lobbying to garner support for women's voting rights. Key milestones. 19th Amendment. The culmination of the women's suffrage movement was the ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920, granting women the right to vote. The amendment marked a watershed moment, recognizing women's political agency and challenging traditional notions of citizenship. Strategic advocacy. Suffragists employed a range of strategies, including marches, rallies, picketing, and civil disobedience. The suffrage movement's strategic activism not only pressured lawmakers but also captured public attention, fostering a national dialogue on women's rights. Impact on American politics. Increased civic participation. The women's suffrage movement significantly increased civic participation among women. As newly enfranchised citizens, women began to engage in the political process, registering to vote, participating in elections, and contributing to the democratic discourse. Shift in political priorities. Women voters brought new perspectives and priorities to the political arena. Issues such as child labor, education, healthcare, and social welfare gained prominence as women sought to address broader societal concerns through the political process. Formation of women's political networks. The suffrage movement laid the groundwork for the formation of women's political networks and organizations. Groups like the League of Women Voters emerged, advocating for issues beyond suffrage and promoting informed civic engagement. Impact on political parties. The inclusion of women in the electorate influenced political parties and candidates. As women became a significant voting bloc, politicians began to address issues important to women, recognizing the importance of their support. Expansion of civil rights movements. The women's suffrage movement set a precedent for future civil rights movements. The fight for suffrage became a symbol of perseverance and paved the way for broader struggles for equality, including the civil rights movement and LGBTQ+ rights. Inspiration for global movements. The success of the women's suffrage movement in the United States inspired women's rights movements globally. The idea that women should have equal political rights became a rallying cry for activists around the world. Challenges and ongoing struggles. Intersectionality. While the women's suffrage movement achieved a significant milestone, it was not without challenges. Issues of intersectionality, acknowledging the different experiences of women of color and marginalized groups, became more prominent in subsequent feminist movements. Continued advocacy. The fight for women's rights did not end with suffrage. Advocacy for equal pay, reproductive rights, and representation in leadership positions continues to be central to ongoing feminist movements. Conclusion. The women's suffrage movement was a transformative force that reshaped American politics, challenging gender norms and expanding the definition of citizenship. The movement's legacy endures in the increased participation of women in politics, the elevation of women's issues on the political agenda, and its inspiration for subsequent civil rights movements. As the United States continues to grapple with issues of equality and representation, the women's suffrage movement remains a testament to the power of activism to effect lasting change in the democratic fabric of the nation.